So, um, all right. So, welcome here to the second episode of the Mail Time podcast. I'm joined today by Gil Dickmann, the cousin of Carmel Gat and the nephew of Kinneret Gat, who both lived, or Kinneret lived in Kibbutz Be'eri. Carmel was visiting her parents. Unfortunately, both were murdered. Kinneret on October 7th, and Carmel just a few weeks ago in Hamas captivity. Um, Gil, I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, I just want to start with the first hot button thing here. I became very close with your cousin Or, and on October 7th, sorry, I apologize, a few weeks ago, when the news started trickling out about Carmel, my understanding was that it was a lot of rumors before families were even spoken to. So, how did you find out that Carmel was murdered?
Yeah, that's right. Um, Most of the information here in Israel starts by rumors, but some of the rumors turn out not to be as true as others. So it was Saturday night here in Israel, and we were all in the hostages square. And I was actually coming into the family's room, in which there are many family members of hostages joined together. And one of my friends just saw me and said, "Oh, did you see that your cousin's name is on the list?" And my immediate answer was, "Okay, but that doesn't mean anything, right? Because there are many rumors about hostages who were killed in captivity or hostages who were actually rescued from captivity. Many of them turn out not to be true, but I didn't want this to be true. I made all the efforts in the world to explain to myself that this is just a rumor, that her name and Hirsch's name were both used because they're celebrities, they're celebrity hostages. Their names are known publicly in Israel and in the United States, and that's why they were used in the rumor. But as time passed and more people asked me about the rumor, and there wasn't any new rumor to replace it, I moment by moment understood that that was actually true, that Carmel was really, really found dead in Gaza.
And,
And only at the night between Saturday and Sunday, uh, August 31st and September 1st, 3:30 in the morning, we received the official message from the IDF officer who came and told us that Carmel's body was found, and later we found out exactly what happened.
to this day, I'm so upset that that's how you guys found out. And as someone who lives in America, it's hard to understand. And again, the global Jewish community coming together, and we've been largely focused on soldier efforts. But the idea that people would leak that information and that's how the family found out, to me, is still so troubling. And have you heard from the
Yeah.
army about where that, who was leaking it, or what, how that got out?
Um, they're saying that they're gonna check it, but we can probably guess where it leaked from. I guess it's from some of the soldiers who were there in the area and who knew who they were trying to locate and even saw the bodies themselves and then leaked the information. And this is not how a family should receive that kind of information. But I have to say, this is not the thing I am most furious about in all of
Right.
this, all of this process, because so many bigger mistakes that actually risked lives and even spare and disposed lives that could have been saved were done in this unbelievable 11-month process, that I'm not focused on the leaked information. But yeah, of course, this is not how we are supposed to get the news. I can tell you that this actually resembles, in a way, the way that we got the message about Kinneret, Carmel's mother, because we knew that she was taken by the terrorists because I went on Telegram that day, October 7th, and I started scrolling through videos and pictures in Hamas and Russian Telegram channels when I found a video of Kinneret, Carmel's mother, being led by terrorists inside the kibbutz. It was clear that it was her because of the way she was dressed and because of her hairstyle and the fact that she was barefoot there on the streets of the kibbutz. And that's how we figured out that she was taken. And 36 hours later, in another video I found on Telegram, that's how I found out that she was killed, because I saw another video of her and all the other hostages who were taken with her on the ground, face down, with a pool of blood right near her head. So that's how we found out that she was murdered. And eventually, that's how we found out at first that Carmel wasn't alive anymore and that she was killed.
Now, you mentioned that what you're most furious about. In preparing for our discussion here, I'd gone through some of your public statements, interviews, and things like that. And the point of this open conversation is not to sit here and say, well, you said this on this date. So
Yeah.
I guess before you go to bed at night, as of right now, we're recording this on September 14th, September 15th. What are you most furious about?
First of all, I feel furious, just like you said. That's what I feel mostly. I'm angry, and I feel like we've been a failure as a family. On October 13th, Carmel's brother Alon called me and he said, "Listen, I need you to take the case of Carmel on yourself to make sure that she comes back home alive, because we understand that she's taken in the hands of Hamas, that it's probably going to be a long fight, and I need you to manage this." And I took it on myself. The only thing that I was angry about that day is that I didn't suggest it myself, because I felt even beforehand that that's something that I should do. But since then, it's my main mission in the world to get her back. And on September 1st, I received the message that I failed. I failed, my family failed, and Israel's failed as a country. There were so many opportunities to get her back. There was the eighth day
What?
of the siege.
Two things. One, I just want to push back on you for one thing. One, you didn't fail as a family. I'm going to say, seeing how much you guys have put forward and dedicated your entire lives, and I met your cousin Or on a plane on his second trip going back to Israel. You guys gave everything you possibly could. When you talk about effort and things that you can control, you guys did everything you possibly could that you could control as a family. And obviously, that's different than the result, and it's different than
Yeah,
if you can influence perhaps other people that were not quote unquote in your control. But from what you guys could wake up in the morning and control, you guys did everything you possibly could in terms of getting it out there. I at least want to say that. Maybe you still consider that you failed, but I'm saying, as someone who observed it, you guys did. You guys went to the ends of the earth, and you should
yeah.
recognize that. At least, I would be remiss if I didn't say that to you.
No,
But
I thank you, and I totally understand, and I get that a lot from many people who tell me, but you did, we saw you doing so much and talking to so many people and all over the world and sending yourself to, as just you said, all parts of the earth, and all going to New York and to Washington, and Alon and the Ardennes family in Germany and us in Israel, and we try to do whatever we can, but the fact is you can't ignore that the mission was to get her back alive, and we failed. And it may be
so,
the answer is that it wasn't in our control and that we can't influence that. But I always I wake up in the morning, and first of all I have to remind myself that she's not here, and that's painful every morning, again and again. But then
oh,
I
you
have to
conditioned yourself that that's what you're doing all day for 11 months.
exactly, yeah. And for 11 months it's just like she wasn't here, and she was far away, and we didn't see her, and I had to to train myself just like you did to the thought that she is still alive and waiting for us to save her. And right now it's very hard to get used to the fact that it's not that way anymore, and that there is nothing we can do right now. And it all also connects to the fact that there are still people there that are alive, that we can still do things so we can save their lives. So what I'm furious about is that there were so many chances to get her specifically home alive. It was
Can
first.
so can you
It
go into those? So you said the first was you said
Yeah,
the eighth day of the ceasefire.
yeah. So we can go even before that, because the way I understand it, the first week after October 7th, there was a deal on the table that could bring back all the women hostages and the children, and in return, we Israel was supposed to release women and children in prison, Palestinians in prison in Israel,
So you're
and
saying
I
you're
was
you so you I again I apologize for cutting you off. I just want to be clear because some of the I think divide and actually let me just take one step back. I'm not post October 7th and after it's 0% political for what we've been involved in, what I've been involved in with soldiers and making sure that they have proper equipment because they're missing so much equipment. And that's how I was going around with your cousin and trying to help as many soldiers as possible. So I'm not. There's a lot of people. I hear a lot of opinions, and the goal of what content wise and this the goal of this podcast is just so people can actually understand what
yeah.
different opinions are saying. So your belief is that on in the first week of the war, before Israel went into Gaza, before the IDF had a full ground invasion, that they could have gotten Carmel, Kfir Bibas, Ariel Bibas, and any
Yeah,
woman and child that's in captivity, that they definitively could have gotten back, and that Sinwar would have relinquished all of the women and children hostages?
that's what I understand. I understood it from Gershon Basking, who was a mediator in the Gilad Shalit deal a few years back, and he told me that on October 13th, before the IDF started the ground invasion, and later I learned that from other reporters who spoke to people in Hamas, who they said that they were actually willing to even give some of the women and children for free, for nothing, because the fact that they're holding women and children was so bad for them in matters of publicity. So they were willing to get them back. I'm not sure that it was that we were able to get them back for free, but definitely given a deal that was very similar to the deal that actually came through in November. I believe that it was really on the table, and that if Israel has put the lives of the hostages and getting them back home alive quickly, before and above everything else, we would have made it. It would be possible, and that was the first chance that I see. And then there was the November deal, which we pushed hard for, and it was signed, and we happily received Yarden, Carmel's sister-in-law, back
Right.
with more than 100 hostages, women, children, and some elderly women and mothers of children. And on the eighth day of the ceasefire, it was the last day that was signed in the contract in the deal. Carmel was supposed to come back with all the other the civilian women who were held in Hamas captivity, including
Didn't,
Elina
didn't they say
Bushan.
that they couldn't? Didn't they say they couldn't find them? Like they said that because
That's
there's
right.
only like 7 out of 10. There's supposed to be 10. And then again, I'm just going to present the position. I remember it was mentioned right after. I remember there was some sort of exchange of fire, perhaps, of
Yeah.
Hamas. So people were already saying, okay, are they violating the deal? Are they true brokers on it? But then, if I recall correctly, there was something about they couldn't locate all of the hostages, and they needed more time to try to find them. Is that
Yeah.
how you recall it?
So I'll tell you what I know. Um, the Hamas was always doing things in order not to complete the deal like they promised. And they said that they wouldn't separate family members one from another, and they did it all the time. And they also said at the end of the seventh day, well, actually, I think they said it at the end of the sixth day as well, that they can't find any more women civilians. They can't locate them. Now we know that it's bullshit because the two hostages who were held with Carmel were taken out on the 50th day of the war, the second day of the ceasefire, and they knew where she was. So that means they knew exactly where Carmel was. They used it as an excuse that they can't find the women, and it seems like they were trying to do their best so the civilian women who didn't have any children would be considered as soldiers, which is that there is it's not right at all. None of these women are soldiers. Carmel wasn't a soldier. She wasn't in the army at the time, and for a long time she there is no reason to
Right.
consider her or all the other women as soldiers. But Hamas were trying their best to maybe get a better deal and a larger amount of terrorists out of jail. So they said that they can't find any more women civilians. So that's what I
And
understand.
they
That
and
they were
those
cut.
and those and the five lookouts, right? That were
Yeah,
taken.
and there are the five locals as well. The five
They
women
would have been
soldiers who are
included or
actually
not?
they they they're another category of women soldiers who are actually soldiers. So there are the five of those, and there were seven more women hostages considered to be alive. We know that they were alive and that they were civilians, and Hamas probably wanted them to be considered as soldiers. So they said that they can't
Right.
locate any more women civilians, but that we're now still waiting on Romy Gonen and Doron Steinbrecher and Arbel
Right.
Yehud and Emily Damari. And we knew that also, by the way, Noah Argamani was in the same
Right.
category, and she was still there. And
And
also
I know
Mael
a
Time and
lot
Carmel
of the
Gat, who
Palestinian.
were both killed just 2 weeks ago.
Right, and a lot of the Palestinian. I remember the Palestinian media was putting out, somehow they got their hands on a picture of Noah Argamani in a army uniform, and they were trying to say, "Oh, well, look, she's actually a soldier." So, to what your point about trying to pin people as soldiers, so it's definitely happening. Um, what in about 2 maybe 3 months ago, when you were very critical of Sinwar, and obviously Sinwar is responsible for the murder uh, of 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 your aunt and your cousin. At the time, it was just your aunt, but
Yeah,
you were very critical, saying that the ball is in Hamas's court. And then in the weeks or so preceding, um, when Carmel was murdered, I sensed from what you were saying that there was a little bit of a shift in
yeah,
the messaging.
yeah. There
What
was
was that all about?
So there wasn't just a shift in the messaging, there was a shift in reality, because we're very connected to what's going on in negotiations. And for quite a while, the ball was actually at Hamas's court, and they didn't answer. They didn't say that they agreed to the deal, and that they're to blame for everything that happened on October 7th. In fact, that they did not agree to a deal meant that the hostages were still there. But it was around July. I think it started on May 27th. Um, Joe Biden presented Israel's Netanyahu's deal, as we call it, the deal that Netanyahu put on the table, and it meant the release of some prisoners, a pause in the war to get the first phase of the hostages back home, the humanitarian phase that included Carmel and all the others, and then two more phases that get all the hostages back home, end the war, and have um, a long ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, and that was the deal that was on the table. And he put it. Hamas took the time to send their answer, and then they answered yes on July 2nd, and they had a few corrections to the deal, but corrections that
What
after
were
I was
the
talking.
like? What kind
I'm
of
not
corrections?
so I'm not familiar with the specific corrections, but after talking to people in the military in Israel, and ministers and former ministers and people who were in the negotiations room, all of them were under the impression that we were able to strike a deal between the two sides. If we have Israel's May 27th and the Hamas's July 2nd, we can get a deal if we just put these guys in the same place and we try to negotiate between the two sides and get a complete deal between the two. That was possible. But right after Hamas gave their answer, then Netanyahu and people in Israel, mainly Netanyahu, started to delay and to put more terms on the table, like the Philadelphia line and other terms that were not at first in the May 27th suggestion. And we were actually, me and Alon Carmel's brother, and we were all in Washington just 1 month ago in July, and I was talking to Prime Minister Netanyahu back then, and he said it very deliberately that he had the chance to get some of the hostages out, and he said, I did not agree. I did not agree to that because he wanted more hostages, because he wanted to keep the Philadelphia line. It's always the excuses keep on. It's all excuses, and they change it once every few days or once every few
So
weeks. But
I
the
have two
bottom
questions
line
for you here.
is that
Yeah.
there was the chance to save Carmel's life, to save Hirsch's lives, and the lives of many others who were a part of the humanitarian phase of the deal. And Netanyahu was the one who said no.
So I have two questions for you, and I don't. Again, I'm it's the utmost sensitivity, and it's not. I'm
Feel
trying
free.
to ask the questions because an Al Jazeera interview or even say a CNN, there's a different approach to a 7 minute, 8 minute conversation versus a longer conversation, and also my hope is that people can really understand your position on this. So,
Yeah.
what do you say to people who respond to your criticism of not accepting the deal as saying, well, the deal would only accept to only receive 25 um, captives, and
Mm-hmm.
it would leave tons of people still in Gaza that are alive, and people that are not that are have been killed would still be in Gaza, and then you see the families um, of soldiers that have been held for 10 years. And what is the prospect of them getting their children's bodies back? And this deal
So
wouldn't have achieved that. So what is your response to that sentiment?
yeah, so that's a good question, and I'll start by saying that the November deal was not supposed to include Carmel at first. It wasn't supposed to include any of my family members at first, but we said that we agreed to this deal and we would love to see this deal. First of all, because I believe that if we have a chance to save lives of people, no matter who, no matter whether it's our family member or not, we should go and do that. And we cannot. I cannot accept the fact that we will say no. We will wait until we can get all of them, and then we can save lives. It's like there was a mother of a hostage, a man hostage who was not supposed to be a part of the first phases of the deal. She said it beautifully. She said it's like we're outside a house that is burning and there are hundreds of people inside. You don't just sit back and wait till you can get all of them at once, and then you will lose all of them. You get in the house and you save whoever you can save. You save their lives, and then you can even make space so that you can go on and save other people's lives. So every hostage who comes home in a deal, it pushes the other hostages one level up in the waiting list for the hostages who are supposed to get out. So
So
the
what
way
about
I
the
see
leverage part though? What about the leverage part in that they might not be they being Hamas might not be as
Mhm.
inclined to make a deal if there aren't quote unquote high level hostages. So they could try to make an
So,
argument that they only have soldiers left, and that would decrease the chance that they would make a deal to get the soldiers out, for example.
so first of all, the way I understand it, Hamas kidnapped these people in order to make a deal, not in order not to make a deal. Their target would be that there is a deal between Israel and Hamas. They'll try to get the highest price they can, and Israel will try to get the lowest price. That's always the situation. And from what I understand, in the Netanyahu's deal, that was the beauty of it. That it actually included all the hostages that are in captivity in Hamas's hands. even though we would start with the humanitarian phase, we would go on to the other phases. And if Hamas chooses not to go on, well, Israel can just come back and fight in Gaza, because Hamas was the one who did not comply with the terms of the deal. So if everything goes as expected, then we would have all of them. If not, Israel could come back and fight in Gaza until we do. And that's
So
why
what?
families of men hostages and soldier hostages that I talked to, and I know many of them, the large majority of them are saying we better begin, because if we don't begin with the first hostage, we will never get to the last hostage. And we cannot wait until we have the perfect deal that brings all the hostages home, because the price of waiting is the fact that they're living a nightmare there and they're suffering with every moment. And we now know that they're also killed there. So if we wait, we'll get less hostages and not more.
And what do you say about the families of fallen soldiers who are concerned or feel that their sons or daughters died in vain if Hamas is able to rebuild, and they don't believe that Israel could go re-enter whenever they wanted to because of political considerations? Meaning, if they
Yeah,
stop doing that, and let's set aside for 1 second some of the ulterior motives. People would say, okay, Bibi is trying to protect his seat. Again,
yeah,
may or may not be true. I want to take that argument off the table for 1 second. Just
yeah.
strategically saying, I don't think that there's for a genuine family who's devastated that their son or daughter fell either on October 7th or after, fighting in Gaza, and says, my child risked their life to destroy Hamas and make sure
Yeah.
that Israel's secure for years and years to come. And a deal like this would desecrate their memory. How do you
So
reconcile those two ideas?
So first of all, I made it a rule for myself. I do not. Um, I have no criticism for what the family of a fallen soldier or either a family of a hostage that is still in Gaza has to say, whether I agree with that or not. But I can tell you the way I see it and the way I spoke to some other families of soldiers who fell on October 7th or after, how they feel about it, which I sympathize with which is the goal of the war is not only to destroy and to eliminate Hamas, which is a very important goal, and something that it will take years. We understand it now, but one of the goals of the war was to get hostages back, and that's an immediate goal that could be reached now. And that's why many of the soldiers going into Gaza aren't saying we're fighting for the very important cause of destroying Hamas, but they're saying we're going into Gaza because there are hostages there and we're trying to save their lives. And we're trying to find them and we're trying to make a deal possible, a deal that will bring the hostages back. So if we decide that we're not going to get the hostages back, they can also say that they died in vain, because their goal coming into Gaza was to get the hostages back, and then the government decides that they're not going to get the hostages back, even though it's possible. That's the first thing. And the second thing, which is it's a more of a moral argument or a philosophical argument, if you wish. The way I see it is that the will of the dead people, I can respect people who think about it and people who want to consider it. It's not more important than the will and the lives of the living people. The people who are alive matter to me more than the people who died. It's like people speak to me about whether I want to revenge Carmel's death because she was murdered by these horrible Hamas terrorists. I don't care for revenge. I don't think that's the most important thing. I think the most important thing is the lives that we can save right now. And that's more important than if Carmel would have wanted to revenge, or whether she wouldn't want to revenge. Now, knowing Carmel, I know that she wouldn't want to revenge anyway. But her will, as someone who died, and shouldn't have died, but she died, her will is not more important than the wills of the people who are still alive there. The people who are alive matter more than the people who died, and that's because they're still alive, they're still with us, and we can still save them. And that's why I think that when you prioritize these two goals, the most urgent one, the most important one, is to save the lives of the people that we can save right now. And that's also in Judaism. The principle of Pidyon Shvuim is that you save the people that you can save right now, and you can even take risks for the future, because in the future you can do many other things in order to make sure that the risk won't come true. And so
Right.
people
Well,
say that it's not because of a deal that we got October 7th. It's because it's because in the 50th, in the 15, or I don't, the 13 years after the Gilad Shalit deal, we didn't do enough to protect Israel from all the terrorists out there. And we transferred money to Hamas from Qatar, in millions and millions of dollars, that we gave money to Hamas. And that's why October 7th happened, because we didn't do enough to defend ourselves. It's not because we saved lives. You first of all save the lives that you can save right now, and then you must do whatever you can to protect the people that are alive right now. You shouldn't make excuses using the will of the people who are no longer with us, as important as they are to us and as dear as they are to us, sacrificing or putting their lives at risk. You should put the interest of the people who are now alive and that you can now save before and above anything else.
so, well, two questions there. One, you touched on Gilad Shalit, and there's been this tendency now for many people, proponents of a deal, to say that the security establishment disagrees with Netanyahu, and they say that we can make a deal and return hostages and things will be fine. These are many of the same security establishment people that led to October 7th, most of them actually, or were involved. Why do we why should we give them credibility in their opinions with what would and would not secure Israel if they were involved in what ultimately led to October 7th and this entire disaster?
Well, I think we have to touch on politics in this question, because you have
Sure.
Netanyahu on one side and the whole military establishment on the other side. And I can tell you that on the months prior to October 7th, they were trying to warn the Israeli public, and they were trying to warn Netanyahu
Who?
that
Who?
that all the military establishment, that something was about to happen. It was either one of the terror organizations, be it Hezbollah or Hamas or Iran, or that they were preparing something. And I know that there was October 7th was very they're all to blame for what happened then and there. That's for sure, because they weren't doing their job, because they didn't protect the people that were attacked that day. I'm not saying that they were okay and that only Netanyahu is to blame, but looking at all of what happened in the last years after the Gilad Shalit deal, and after Hamas regained control over Gaza, the people who decided to give money to finance Hamas and to make it stronger at the expense of the PLO, of the Palestinian Authority. um, it wasn't the military, it was Netanyahu. That's how he saw things. He thought that keeping Hamas strong and the PLO weak was Israel's interest, and he said it. Bezalel Smotrich said it, and the military tried to say other things. They tried to say that a terror organization should not be as strong as it is, and we should not finance it. And that's what they were trying to say for a long, long time. And even though they made some mistakes, some unbelievable mistakes, some of them led to the fact that my aunt is no longer here and that so many people were killed on October 7th. I think we should look at what they're assessing right now, and to consider what they're saying as the professional, the professional stance. And what they're saying in their professional stance is that the IDF was founded in order to keep the lives of Israelis safe. It's the Israeli Defense Force to defend the lives of Israelis. And we have 101 Israelis. Most of them are alive, but some of them are not, that you have to defend right now. And The military has said we've done whatever we could to put Israel in the best position to make a deal. They said it in the middle of May. Now go ahead and make this deal, and then we can fight Hamas. Even in we will have better chances to defeat Hamas because there will no longer be hostages in the area, which we will have to try not to hit when we hit Hamas. That's what they're saying, and that makes a lot of sense. And people, right wing and left wing, are saying that it's not a matter of politics, but Netanyahu, the prime minister, decides to go with having a never ending war, which will not eliminate Hamas because you can't really hit Hamas without hitting hostages. It will not free hostages because Israel has said no to a deal. And we will just go on and on and on with this war that only these two psychopaths, Netanyahu and Sinwar, wanted to go on, and at the expense of people on both sides of the border.
So I want to push. I want to probe you on a few things here.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just say that there are a lot of questions about the security establishment and the decisions that led up to October 7th. But in the
Yeah,
interest of time, I want to I'm not ignoring some of the things you said. In the interest of time, I want to focus on something you just said there about Netanyahu. Do you think that Netanyahu, you said this, you called him a psychopath, and I know
yeah,
that after Carmel Gat was murdered along with the five other hostages, um, some of the rhetoric coming out of the hostage forum was that they were abandoned to die, if that's correct.
definitely.
Do you think that do you think Netanyahu wanted them to die?
No, I think Netanyahu wants to see the hostages back home. I think he's not willing to pay the price. And by the price, I mean his political price. That's what he's not willing to pay. And that means that, considering all of that, he's trying to weigh whether it would be good for him to get hostages back and to pause the war or not. And then he decides that it's not good for his own political gain, and he's willing to sacrifice them. He's willing to abandon them to die. He's willing to spare their lives and to have them killed because we all knew that it was possible. We all knew that it was on the table. We urged him to sign the deal that'll get Carmel back, and he decided not to, just like I described. And we said all the time that the military pressure and the military working in the area puts the lives of the hostages at risk. We knew that because it happened to other hostages. It was all on the table and it was all known. And Netanyahu deliberately decided that it's more important for him to keep the war going for many excuses that changed all the time, even if it means that hostages will get killed. So I don't think he was planning on them getting killed. I don't think that he wanted the hostages to come back in coffins. But from what I understand, he knew that it was possible. He knew that there was a high chance that that was going to happen. And he took this chance because it's more important for him to keep the war going than to save lives of hostages. And that's what I'm angry about. That's what I can't accept as an Israeli, and not for my own cousin and
Right.
not for all the other hostages. Because if there is something more important than my life or the life of any other Israeli, well, that means that the state of Israel that was founded in order to protect us, to protect our lives, to make sure that no Jewish person or any other person is faced with being pulled out of his bed at night and then killed in some dark tunnel again, just like happened to my great grandfather and to my great grandmother in the Holocaust. Well, that means that the purpose of the Israeli state is now changed completely, and there are more important things than the lives of the Jewish people.
So okay. So you think that at one hand you said you don't think that he wanted them to die,
Yeah,
but you say he's willing to he would prioritize his political survival over the lives of the hostages,
yes,
which is a pretty intense statement. So I just want to understand. So you're saying that you think it's more important for him to be prime minister than it is for the remaining hostages to come home. That's your belief.
yeah, yeah, or to come home alive. Because for him, he got the hostages back home. He promised to get the hostages back home, and Carmel is now, she's no longer hostage. She's now in Israel, but she's dead. So for him, maybe getting the hostages home not alive, is also completing what he promised for the Israeli people. But
But
when he
wait
has
a
to
sec. Don't wait, wait.
prioritize,
Hold on. Don't you think that he would politically look a lot better if he got every hostage back home alive? Don't you think that would help him politically?
that's what I thought for a long time. That's why I tried to convince him to do the right thing for him, the right thing for us, and then and get hostages back home. He doesn't seem to think it. He thinks that keeping in power and keeping the government intact with Ben-Gvir and Smotrich with him is more important than getting hostages back, and that's the only explanation I can get for changing excuses for not getting a deal to get the hostages back. And I think if you
Is
ask
it?
most of the Israelis, if you ask most of the Israelis what they think about their own prime minister, whether he says his own political interests or the lives of the hostages, what's more important, most of the Israelis will say that Netanyahu puts his political interest first. And it could be because he might be facing prison himself, because he's on trial. It could be for any other reason. I have to say, I don't care. And if it changed, and it can still change, if Netanyahu will come to the public and say, I am willing to now pay a political price or not pay a political price, but get the hostages back because it's the most important thing, I'll support him and I'll support that. And I said it all the time. And I believe the public will support him and he will gain politically from it. But he is still too afraid of losing his own support, the support of Ben-Gvir and Smotrich who support his government. He's still doing whatever he decides to do to make sure that his government stays intact, and he's willing to pay with the lives of hostages because he can always say, I didn't kill them, Hamas killed him. And the way I see it, that's right that Hamas pulled the trigger, but it's like when you leave a baby inside a car on a hot summer day and you say, well, the sun killed him. Well, you shouldn't have left them there. And realizing that you left him there, you should have come quickly right away, and you should have gotten this baby out, and you didn't. And there are two babies who are still in this horrible place. Netanyahu does not come back to get them out, and that's why he is to blame for what's going on.
So I want to respond and with a question, and then
Mm-hmm.
I have another one to close. But how do you respond to someone who would take your analogy and say that um, there's two parents to this baby that was left in the car. There's the army and there's the political class, and that
Mm-hmm.
the army was holding the baby and dropped it and it went into the car. Okay, I'm going to go with this analogy, um,
Definitely.
and it was there, and then the political class, Netanyahu was doing whatever they could militarily or encouraging to try to create space, and soldiers died. Hundreds and hundreds of soldiers died. Thousands of soldiers are injured. You have an economy that's in despair from all the reservists that have been going back and forth and giving everything they can and trying to galvanize support worldwide, at home, trying to do whatever they can. And on the other side of the table, you have a genocidal monster in Sinwar who organized this entire event on October 7th, murdered your aunt,
Mm-hmm.
and that there it's not as simple as just saying, okay, you left the baby in the car. You're dealing with you know a very extensive reality that's not at, to try to go save these people,
Yeah.
and
So
he's
so
genuinely trying just with a million different um, obstacles. And that's again, and I'm not giving a pass to whether or not it's the right time to push for various policies or anything with judicial reform, or I'm not leaving
no,
that
no, we're not
aside.
talking about
Just
that.
from a
But
just a strategic thing that there's so many considerations, um, and it's
yeah,
not as simple.
yeah. So after talking to Gadi Eisenkot, who was also a part of the war cabinet for a long time, and after talking to other people who were a part of the conversation and a part of the negotiations, um, I can say that I understand that there was an opportunity to get hostages back, and Netanyahu missed it a few times. And maybe now there isn't, and it's due to the fact that we didn't make the right decision when we could get the hostages back, and we lost them. And even if, from what I understand, Netanyahu knew that he had the chance, and he decided to dismiss it and to keep the war going. But even if I agree with what you were trying to imply, that Netanyahu wasn't able to get the hostages back, that it wasn't within his powers to even do so. Well, that means he promised to get the hostages back, and it's good that he promised that. But my cousin Carmel, after surviving 11 months in captivity, she came back in a coffin. She came back dead. That means that my government failed, and that the military failed. They failed at bringing her back. And if
I
after
don't think
a year,
anybody.
wait, wait,
I
wait,
think you
wait,
could unify though.
wait,
Yeah,
just a moment, just a
yeah,
moment. If after a
absolutely. Yeah.
year of war, a year after October 7th, we're approaching the 1 year mark, October 7th, 2024, you failed, and 27 hostages who were caught alive were killed in captivity, and the 101 hostages are still in captivity. For me, that means that you all failed. And it doesn't matter to me whether only Prime Minister Netanyahu resigns, or all of the military, of the commanders of the military, and the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense. They all come to the Israeli public and say, we failed, we tried, and we didn't make it. We might want to let somebody else do the job, because it's a tiny terror organization that we're facing. It's not Hezbollah, it's not Al Qaeda, it's Hamas. It's a tiny terror organization, and we didn't manage to get the hostages back from them yet. So after a year of a war, that's a failure. For us, it's the ultimate failure, because Kamel will never be back. But for the other hostages, they have to declare a failure, or unless we will keep on going the same path that we're walking on, and hostages will not come back. They will not come back alive. They'll come back in coffins. Things will just go on and on and on, just like they were before. And I think we have to learn from what happened in the last few months, and that's what we have to learn. That after a year of trying, we failed. We failed as a country, just like I said, I failed. I failed as a family member, and my country has failed as a country, and my military has probably failed as a military, because they're not here. So you have to change courses, and you have to try other ways to try to get them home. Maybe through a deal, that's what I think. Maybe other things, but you have to try different things, or unless we will keep on walking the same path, and hostages will come back dead.
One of the reasons I'm really happy we're able to have this discussion is I think that hearing out the frustrations and the experiences is actually extremely unifying in the sense that many of what you just said there, you will hear from the most right wing parts of Israeli society.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not you're part of Kaplan, or you knew someone who was murdered on October 7th, or you live in Hebron, or you live in Eli, it doesn't matter. The idea of wanting responsibility and wanting accountability and wanting I feel that there's a sense that people just want leaders to take um, leadership skills
Yep.
seriously. And whether that's communicating better or just feeling that you're heard, um, that's something that I hear across the board, whether that's from hostages that were released, widows of fallen soldiers, soldiers that were injured, Miluim that have been there for 300 days plus.
Yeah.
There's that common thread, and sometimes it's lost when it's a two-sentence thing in Times of Israel or any other newspaper or any other
Definitely.
uh, media. So
I think you said it right. Responsibility and accountability are so important, and it should be across the board. It's not like I only see Netanyahu and they want to revenge him specifically, and I want him to resign, and after that everything is good and well. No, no. I think all of us deserves better answers. All of us deserve leaders that pay for their own mistakes. Because if you don't pay for your own mistakes, you're just prone to do them again and again and again. And it's not like the leaders pay the price. We pay the price. The Miloimnikim pay the
Right.
price. The soldiers pay the price. The citizens of Israel pay the price, and we as families pay the price. And that's why we deserve better leadership, and we deserve better, more accountability, just like you said.
And I hope that people like Eisenkot and others, I can speak to them on this podcast because for me, like you mentioned it, and the mix between the military leadership, security leadership, and politicians to me is just so delicate because when I hear the name Eisenkot, I know that he was in charge of the army, and then when I see the insane shortages and I see the lack of readiness, I'm very viscerally upset at all of these people that didn't take care of these things back then. You know, we're pulling helmets off of soldiers when I was running around with Orr that could
Yeah,
have been used when Begin and Sadat were together. So it's
yeah,
it's it's really it's just so wild. And like you said, I hope that the leadership can we can Israeli society and Jews around the world can work together and continue to work together and cross these political divides or religious divides, whatever it might be, and just be unified and trying to help strengthen Israeli society however we can. Your family has been through so much. It really is unbelievable to see your involvement and how you've just stayed so focused on the cause of your cousin. And I know you're going to maintain that you failed, but I just need to say it again that you really just every everyone should be so lucky to have a cousin like you who did everything it possibly could to try to help. And if people are looking to help your family and kind of continue the legacy, what are you guys? Do you have any ways of doing that now? Do you have legacy projects in the works? And of course, if you send it to me, I'll put it in the show notes so people can contribute after.
yeah. So we're working on a few things, and yoga for Carmel, just something that we initiated after learning that Carmel was doing yoga with the other hostages in captivity, was something that we're going to continue doing, even though Carmel is no longer with us, because the most important thing is the lives of the hostages who are still there. So you can support that, and I can link you, I think, a link that can help that specifically. But I would urge
Great,
you not to support specifically Carmel, because it's too late for her, but to support the hostages families forum. That's the most important thing to support right now, and because they're working, and I'm working with them. I'm still with them to help all the other hostages. And we spoke about very important things like accountability, the ability to know and address your own failures and to correct in order to get better results. But all of that would have to happen only after we save the lives of the people who are still being held alive there. Some of them with guns to their heads, just like Carmel had, and they're looking at us, trusting us to find them and to get them out, so that a deal comes to save them before the military pressure comes and pulls the trigger of the gun that is pointed to their head. So the most important thing is to support the hostage families and to support their efforts to get the hostages back to a deal. And I will try to find the right link for that, and for Carmel's yoga for the hostages, which is another way of supporting the hostages that are still there.
Gil. I appreciate your time, man.
Thank you very much. It's been amazing talking to you. Thank you.
Be in touch. Thank you.